Well, good morning, everybody. So glad you're here today. My name is Joel Adorman. I'm the lead pastor, and whether you are joining us in person or online, we are just so glad that you are with us wherever you are and wherever you find yourself. Thanks for being here. I want to start the message today talking about life goals. Life goals. 2 days ago, Friday, very dear friend of mine, one of the few men in this country I refer to as friend, was promoted to be with Jesus and left this life. And I got to spend a little bit of time with him last Wednesday, and in talking to the guy, this was the guy who who broke me of making New Year's resolutions. He was the guy that was always goal-driven. And there we were in his bedroom there, and we knew this would be the last time we'd see each other this side of heaven. And he's giving me instructions. He was always telling me what to do. And he gave me instructions for how he wanted me to preach his funeral coming up at the end of this month. And he said, "Now look, I don't want any whining. I don't want any complaining. Oh, woe is John." He goes, "John is going to be in heaven with Jesus." But then he said the same thing to me he always said. He said, "Joel, don't wear your life out pursuing things that don't matter." And he said, "I don't want to be remembered for the stuff I did or the business I ran. I want people to remember me because of what Jesus did for me." And he saved someone who was broken and then blessed him and gave him a home in heaven. And what really struck me is that there at the end of his existence, like the old joke says, he wasn't saying, "I wished more time in the office," or "I wish I had just done a little bit more to get that big client." No, he was just saying, "I am so glad I get to spend these last few days with the people I love." You see, that is a life goal. His goal, what drove him, and what he poured into me was driving yourself not for stuff, but for the things that matter. And then to keep pursuing those things that matter. Now, so that brings up a question then. What is your life goal? What are you living for? Maybe like the old song, everybody works for the weekend. Maybe you're just working so that you can get to the end of the week and have some time off, however your schedule works out. Maybe what you're living for is that time when you don't have to work anymore at all. You get to retire. Maybe you're working to simply buy something. I don't know, whatever that something is. Maybe you want to be a millionaire by the time you retire. They say, by the way, most of us can earn $1 million in our lifetime if we just saved it all. But whatever it is, we're working for something. Something is getting you up in the morning. Something is putting one foot in front of the other. What is that thing? Because whether it's written or unwritten, we are all living for something. And that something somehow usually involves money. It's just hard to do things without money. If you want to work for the weekend, it's going to be really hard to have a weekend if you're broke. You're not going to go very far. You want to retire someday? Well, you're not going to do that without money. You want to become a millionaire by the time you're 40 or 50 or 60, whatever. You're not going to do that without money. You kind of get the drift here. It's very difficult to do anything in our world without money. Money is what it takes to do what we do in many cases. Not everything, of course, but in many ways it is. But see, therein lies the problem. Because we can make now the pursuit of money our primary goal. Our life goal can simply be the accumulation of stuff and getting more money so that we can get more stuff. And it doesn't sound very nice to say that, but frankly, we can find out really quickly. And that is what would happen if half your money was gone. How would you feel? Stressed. But some people would really be messed up. And I don't mean just financially. Because if money becomes your idol, it becomes your God, it becomes your goal, man, you're in for a world of hurt. You see, money is one of these things that it is a wonderful tool, and you got to have it. But money is a terrible taskmaster. It is a horrible thing to work for because it's never satisfied. Wealth always wants a little bit more, and it can drive us to do things we would never normally do. Now, the Bible talks a ton about money. It talks more about money than it does about heaven and hell. Because money is oftentimes that thing that we can fixate on to the point that we lose perspective on the rest of life. And that's really the heart behind this little 3-part message series called Coins. It's based on Jesus' teaching in Matthew chapter 6, 19 through 34. And it's such a big passage, we said we've got to break this down into 3 parts. It's just too much to consume in one time because we'll have to gloss over way too much. And it's too important. What Jesus says in this passage is so important to our lives and is so relevant to where we live. We said, we got to park it for a little while and actually look at this. Right at the beginning of a year, when January is still pretty fresh, you only have about half the days marked off on a calendar. January is still pretty new. 2022 is, you're still writing 2021 and having to scratch it out. I mean, it's fresh. Now is the time to get this right. And today we started off, and right at the beginning of this passage, the first 3 verses, Matthew chapter 6, 19 through 21, and we're calling it Money from God's Perspective, because this is where Jesus starts. He starts off with helping us see from God's vantage point, how does He view our money? In the Pew Bible there in front of you, it's page 661. And if you do not have a print Bible of your own and you would like one, please receive this as a gift from us. We would love nothing more than for you to take this and have a print copy of the Bible for your own. But whether you are borrowing it or taking it to keep as a gift, it's page 661, Matthew chapter 6, 19 through 21. We are landing right in the middle of Jesus' sermon, but it's the entire section that He's talking about here. And Jesus says this, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Now, we begin this by seeing that there are limits to our accumulation. There are some practical limits to what we're supposed to accumulate. Now, it is very easy to take these verses out of context, rip it out of the Bible, and just look at them all by themselves and make them say things it never said. Some people would use these verses to say that Jesus is saying that having a savings account is a sin. Not true. Proverbs chapter 6, verses 6 through 8 tells us it is a good thing and we should be saving for the future. So He's not just talking about saving. Also, later on in Proverbs 31, 8, and 9, and in the New Testament in 1 Timothy 6, 18, we're told to give to the poor. You can't give to the poor if you don't have anything. So obviously, accumulation in and of itself is not the problem. But Jesus still tells us, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth. So what's He talking about? If He's not just talking about savings, and He doesn't just give us some kind of limit, He doesn't say, well, don't save up any more than 15% of your income or 20% of your income. He never says that. He just makes this big blanket statement. So what does He mean? He's saying, don't make the pursuit of treasure your life goal. Don't make the pursuit of wealth the primary driving force of your life. And actually, there's a lot of logic to this. What I love about what the Scriptures do is that it's not pie in the sky. The Scriptures never give us this idea that is just devoid from reality. Instead, it is based in where we are living. Think about it. Jesus is saying, don't kill yourself trying to gain wealth in this world, because wealth can be stolen. Wealth can be devalued. All of a sudden, you can just have nothing, because the only thing that makes the paper, if you happen to deal with print money anymore, most of us use electronic now, but if you do, that piece of paper is only worth anything because our government says it is and because the world acknowledges it. But let's look at what the mighty dollar has done over the years. What is the value of a dollar? Now, at the beginning of every single year, various organizations come out, they crunch all the data on the value of the dollar. For the longest time, the U.S. dollar was considered the standard currency for the world. I mean, this is how the world gauged their currency against the dollar. But what if we compare the U.S. dollar to itself? What about way back in the year 2000? Remember Y2K, the world was going to end because our computers didn't know what to do? $1 in the year 2000 is worth $1.55 today. 55 cents more. Well, let's go back to 1980. I was a little kid in 1980. The 80s were awesome. That dollar in 1980 is worth $3.40 today. Yeah, it's lost some value. Well, let's go back a little further. 1970. This was a few years before I was born. That dollar is worth $6.91 today. But wait, let's go back to 1956. And for those of you under 40, there are plenty of people who were born before 1956 in this room. Do not judge. 1956, that dollar in 1956 is worth $9.72 today. Let me give you the really bad news. Let's flip that around. What that means is $1 in 1956, compared to that, your buying power is less than a penny compared to 1956. And Jesus says, why in the world would you kill yourself for something that that can happen to. It can be, you can hold it in your hand and it can be stolen while you're even holding on to it. Jesus says, don't pursue that kind of stuff. Why would you kill yourself for that? Now again, the Bible is not against saving. The Bible does not say wealth is a sin. Wealthy people are not evil people. For the record, some of the most generous people I know are very wealthy. Personally, whom I personally know. So Jesus isn't saying all that. What he's saying is when you just look at this, just in the past, I don't know the math on that, 70 years, give or take. Forgive my math, I'm rounding. But if it can do that, Jesus says, why would you absolutely make this your God? No. Instead, he tells us, verse 20, but instead, store up for yourselves treasure in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, where governments cannot devalue, okay? And where thieves or politicians, I don't know, do not break in and steal. Y'all are asleep. I'm trying to wake you up. I want you to see this. This is really good stuff Jesus is saying, and you're like going, I'm thinking about lunch. Stop. Focus. Disciples of Jesus are called to long-term perspectives. That's what he's telling us in verse 20. Now, this is where it gets really weird, because he says, don't store up treasures on earth, because, they're fleeting. They can fly away. He says, instead, store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean you have like a spiritual piggy bank somewhere in your house and you put your money in there and you cram it in there, and then when you get to heaven, Jesus goes, well, here's your piggy bank. Here's all your money for all eternity. No. But he is making a very powerful metaphor that we can understand. He is saying, pursue those things that make an eternal difference. Pursue those things that actually can change something. Do you need money? Yes, of course. Jesus isn't saying you don't. But he's been saying, don't kill yourself trying to get it. Instead, have a long-term perspective. Have a perspective that sees beyond today, that sees beyond right now. This goes right into the heart of this whole life goal. What are you living for? That's what he's talking about. What gets you up in the morning? Is it like the parody of the Disney song, I owe, so off to work I go? Is that what you're living for? Just to get out of a hole? Okay, a good thing. You need to get out of the hole. But is that it? Is that all? And most of us want to live for more. Jesus is telling us how to do this. Back in the early 80s, there was an expression that said, he who dies with the most toys wins. Someone got smart and made a t-shirt that said, he who dies with the most toys still dies. You still die, and you're not going to take a penny with you. But you might be able to take the influence of what that money did. Now that might mean something in heaven. That what you did with that, what you did with those resources here on earth, that might make a difference. There might be people in heaven because of what you gave. There might be people in heaven that came to Jesus because of something you did somewhere along the way where you paid it forward or you somehow provided for them, and they ended up having a conversation with somebody else, and then now they're in heaven because of that. That's long-term perspective, because in the end, we're not going to take it with us. And that's why all of this matters. Because we kill ourselves for 75 to 85, depending on your lifespan, years, and we're still not getting out of this thing alive. No matter what we do, no matter how wealthy you are, death wins. And Jesus says, knowing that's the reality, or like the 80s t-shirt said, knowing it's going to happen, that long-term perspective says, it's got to be more than just the pursuit of money. There's got to be more driving me. Which is why Jesus said, as he punches us right between the eyes, verse 21, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. That's why it matters. Because finances reveal the direction of our hearts. Finances tells us where we're going, the direction we're facing. That you can flip that around and say, where your heart is, your treasure is. They're matched. That where your money is put is where your heart's going to be. People who invest in companies, I guarantee you care far more about those companies than I do. Why? Your money is there. It makes sense, right? Your money's there, so you're going to care a whole lot more. If you're a business owner and you have put so much money into starting that business, I promise you care more about your business than I do. And I pray for your business, but I promise you care more. Why? Because your heart's there, because your treasure's there. Nothing wrong with that. Jesus is saying something that we already know, we just don't like to admit. Likewise, when we give to our local church and we give to, whether it's our church or we give to another nonprofit agency, we are much more likely to be involved. Why? Our heart and our money work together. It's the way this works. Very few people, some can, but very few people can actually put their money somewhere and forget all about it. There are some who can truly defy this human nature. Most of us can't. Most of us, our finances are going to say something about what we value and where we live and what we are and where we're going. It's going to reveal something about us. It's going to reveal something about what we value. It's going to reveal something about what we love. It's going to reveal something about what we are getting up in the morning to do. See, money is everywhere. Money's not the problem. We are the problem. And Jesus is saying, look, your heart and your money go hand in hand, so make sure you're putting your heart and your money in the right place. We see this principle working out at every garage sale. Garage sales are a blast. You can get some good deals. But occasionally you'll come along at a garage sale. If you've never been to a garage sale, let me tell you how these things roll. You'll come along and you'll find this table of junk. And you see something there you want, like a can opener. Work with me. And you see the can opener and you say, man, I need one of those. That's a pretty fancy can opener. It has the built-in knife sharpener in the back. By the way, if you love your knives, never use the built-in sharpener on a can opener for your knives. If you do that, just give me your knives. You clearly don't need these things. Okay. But let's just say it's got all the doodads you want, okay? Bottle opener, the whole 9 yards. And you say, that's a good can opener. And you look at the price at this garage sale and it says $5. $5? So then the owner comes around. And you put on your best, gonna negotiate face. And you're like, hey, I'll give you $1 for that whole table. And they're like, no. You see, my husband gave that can opener to me at our 1-year anniversary. $5. $5. It is not worth $5, but it is to her because her heart had some sentimental connection to that. She wants $5 for an anniversary gift. See, we see this principle working all the time. You see it working on the other end at estate sales. Equally a blast. Some ring will come along and somebody will have a ring. I'll use mine just temporarily. They'll say, hey, this is my grandfather's ring, and they're convinced this thing is worth thousands because it's old. And they'll say, well, it's old, it's in good shape, and they get it appraised by a jeweler. Jeweler comes back and the person's going, it's worth like $2,000 or $3,000, isn't it? It's worth $2,000 or $3,000. The jeweler goes, $150. And the person's just absolutely crestfallen. They're just so sad. Because to them it's worth a whole lot because their heart's invested in it. Their heart is invested in it, and now all of a sudden the value goes up in their mind, but really it's only worth $150. Or the can opener is only worth $1, probably 50 cents if it even works. But that's what Jesus is saying, that our hearts and our money goes together, and we will value that which we love. We will overvalue it sometimes. We will defend it, and we will hold it in such high esteem because that's where our heart is. That's why Jesus is putting this together. That's why it matters so much. There in your bulletin today is a little bitty fake dollar. I left my bulletin sitting right there. I need that. Yeah, that'll work. Thank you. Always come prepared, and I left mine on the front row. Sorry. For those of you online, I had to walk over and get this, which we handed out. So this $1 billion bill, do not do this, but you could try to pay for your lunch today with this. You could try tomorrow to go get some groceries and pay for this. Don't. But if you did, it would be really funny because there's no value in this. No one is going to accept this as valid. It's not real currency, and it has no value whatsoever except maybe to us and the lesson we're going to give to it. But that's what Jesus is saying, that in heaven our money has no value. It is worthless. Heaven doesn't acknowledge our money at all. But Jesus is saying that on this earth we will engage in this practice of where our money is and where our heart is, they're going to go together. That where you find our money, you're going to find our heart. Where you find our heart, you're going to find our money, which is why this lesson is very important in what Jesus is saying in Matthew 6:19 through 21. That our goal is God's adoration, not greedy accumulation. So the issue is not accumulation, it's the greed associated with it. It is the pursuit of making it our God. And so what this little bitty $1 billion bill is trying to remind us is that our goal is God's adoration. The numbers are irrelevant. In heaven's eyes, it doesn't matter how much or how little you have. Greed comes in all income levels. But our goal is not greed. Our goal is God's adoration, not greedy accumulation. In the book of Proverbs, we read this in Proverbs 23, 4 and 5. The author writes, "Don't wear yourself out to get rich. Do not trust your own cleverness. Cast but a glance at riches, and they're gone. For they will surely sprout wings and fly off to the sky like an eagle." Doesn't that sound about like the last year with inflation? Doesn't that just kind of, shoo, where'd the money go? It just went away. Our goal is God's adoration. And you got to laugh at this stuff. It's no joke that gas costs so much. I'm just saying, you got to laugh at it. Our goal is God's adoration, not greedy accumulation. It's not that the issues aren't real. They are. It's not that we may not be frustrated at those issues. Okay. But it's that our ultimate life goal is not just accumulation. It's giving glory to God. That's what Paul the Apostle writes. In Ephesians 1, 3 through 6, he writes, "Praise be to the God and Father our Lord Jesus Christ, who has blessed us with large bank accounts." Oh, you don't have that version. Oh, okay. Yours says, "Who has blessed us in the heavenly realms with every spiritual blessing in Christ." And here's the blessing. "He chose us in Him before the creation of the world to be holy and blameless in His sight. In love, He predestined us for adoption to sonship through Jesus Christ, in accordance with His pleasure and will, to the praise of His glorious grace, which He has freely given us in the one He loves." That's our goal. It's giving glory to God, reflecting that back to Him, showing the world whose we are and what we're living for. And that's going to be reflected even in how we treat our money, because our goal is God's adoration. That's our life goal. That's what we're going to be living for. That's what we want people to say about us. This really is true. You can't take it with you. This doesn't matter in the end. This is like us trying to pay for lunch with $1 billion bill from our bulletin. God's not going to care what your bank statement said. He's not going to care the stuff and the toys you have. That's what He's going to care about. Which is why we need to make a life goal for eternity, to see things from a much larger perspective. One thing I love so much about my friend who is now with Jesus is he was the guy who would call me on a regular basis, and he would not ask, "How's the church doing?" He wouldn't ask me, "Man, have you hit that latest goal, or have you written that chapter in the book?" I don't even know if he even asked me those things once, and the whole time I knew him. What he'd always ask me is, "How's your marriage? Are you having dates with your wife? Is she happy? And would she agree if I called her and asked her the same?" That's all he cared about. For everything he could have taught me, and the guy taught me a lot about business, but for all of that, because his life goal was relationships and spending time with people and loving people. The money was very secondary for him. See, that's a life goal for eternity, to see things from a much bigger perspective, that the rest of the stuff's going to come and go, but the people we spend time with, the people we invest in, that takes a lot more than money. That takes some time. Amen. But that's why I want to encourage you and challenge you, whatever word I can put in there to get you to do it. Look at your budget. Look at how you're spending your money. Maybe even keep that $1 billion bill close by. I mean, most of you are still going to get some kind of print bill in the mail from somebody. If nothing else, DMV is going to send you your car registration in the mail, because they have not figured out a way to make this electronic yet. So you're going to have some basket somewhere where you're going to have bills. Maybe put this $1 billion bill close by to remind you. But look at your budget. Look really at where you're spending your money. Now, Jesus isn't saying we can't spend money on entertainment. That's not what we're saying. That's a line in our budgets. It's how we spend money and how we entertain and what we do for fun. There's nothing wrong with that. Jesus is not down on fun at all. So don't walk out here saying, "Well, Joel says we can't go see a movie because it's a sin." I didn't say that, and Jesus didn't say that. I'm just saying, look at your budget. Where are you spending it? That's all I'm saying. Where are you spending it? Because that's going to reveal what you value. I've said it before. You will subsidize what you love. And it's going to be reflected in how you spend your money. Every bill, all those names that come on those statements that you get, PG&E, MID. I value paying my utilities. I value heat. Those are good things to value. Paying your bills is a good thing. The Bible talks about that. Those are good things. Providing for people, that's a good thing. Paying your taxes. Jesus said, give to Caesar what is Caesar's. That's a good thing. I will not give one penny more than I owe, but I will pay them, okay? But I'm just saying, look at it. Where are you spending it? And if you're overspending it, this really helps, because then it becomes, you go, where? Where am I wasting? Because God's given me enough. What is He calling me to do? How is He calling me to see this? Look at it, because it's going to reflect your heart. I promise it will. That's what Jesus said. I can promise it. That's what Jesus said. He said, where your treasure is, your heart's going to be there. Your budget, your checking account, your statements are going to reveal what you value. But now, this is not just true for an individual. It's true even for us as a church. As an entire church, this is true. Our congregation's budget, or what we call it our financial ministry plan, it reflects our priorities. It reflects those things we value. Because there's only so much money in the pot. That's true for you individually. It's true for us as a church. There's only so much. So the way we have to allocate that is we have to say, now, of all the good things that can be done, where are the great things that align with us and align with our vision and our mission and our values? It's not that the other things are bad. It's that we can't spend it on everything. Neither can you. You see how this works? The parallel works, okay? So we have to reflect our priorities and how we spend our money. Now, some churches get really creative. And I say this, tongue planted firmly in cheek. They'll tell their congregations, oh, we spend $50,000 or $60,000 on international missions. And everybody goes, oh, wow, we're so generous. They don't tell you 95% of it is not spent there. They just tell you a big raw number. So I will tell you right up front, you can look, our budget is published, and we don't hide it. Most of our money is actually spent right here. Not all of it, but most of it. Why? Because this is the community we've been called to reach for Jesus. We are a missionary outpost in Merced. Okay, this is our foundation for the base of everything we do. We're trying to reach this city. We're trying to reach this county. That is not free. The gospel is free, but you think lights are free? No. Heating is not free. Cooling in the summer is not free. It's not. Adding solar is a good thing, but it's not free. Okay? And so we have to engage in that too. But because of that, because of your generosity that's filling that bucket, we're now able to do not just things here, but we're able to support missionaries like the one we talked to last week in our interview, or the ones we're going to talk to in March at our Global Focus Month. And we're going to see more about that. Yes, our reach is international, but it's because of what God is doing right here. Because again, our congregation's budget, just like your family, just like your individual one, is going to reflect priorities. It's not everything you can do, but it represents the best of what you can do because God's given you those resources. God's not made us a $5 million church, and that's cool. God's given us everything we need to do the ministry He's called us to, and He's given you everything you need to do what He's called you to do too. See, sometimes I think we get out of whack because we're trying to live like somebody, and God hasn't blessed us with that. That maybe God hasn't given you a family income of $200,000. So we got to spend less time cursing those folks and more time saying, God, this is what you've given me. Maybe it's not a lot, but He's given you what you need to do what He's called you to do. That's what Jesus is telling us, that whether it's a church or whether it's an individual, that what we pursue is not just getting more stuff so that at the end of it all we can say, man, look at my menagerie of toys. No, He's called us to pursue His righteousness, to pursue His kingdom, to bring His kingdom on earth. Does it take some money? Sure. But mostly it takes our hearts. That's what Jesus is always going after. Our goal is God's adoration, not greedy accumulation. And that's money from God's perspective.